La petite équipe langue vous souhaite la bienvenue en langue maternelle. En malgache, Tungasu.
Bun venit la Ziua Internazională a Limbii Materne. Benvenute alla Giornata Internazionale della Lingua Madre.
Benvinguts a tots al Dia Internacional de la Llengua Materna. Gràcies.
Welcome to International Mother Language Day 2022.
بركة غوصة مضلان انتو تليت تممرت غا ومضال.
Okay. So, Ohayou gozaimasu, konnichiwa, good morning and bonjour from Paris. First of all, happy International Mother Language Day and welcome to this international webinar to celebrate the 23rd edition of this very important day. My name is Maki Hayashikawa and I am the Director of the Division for Education 2030 and will be your Master of Ceremony and moderator for this 2 hours webinar. May I just first give a quick housekeeping before we begin? The webinar is being recorded and interpretation is available. Please keep your microphone and camera off when you do not speak, but when you do, please, of course, turn it on so that everyone can see you and hear you as well. Now, the theme of this year's International Day is using technology for multilingual learning, challenges, and opportunities. We are joined by an excellent list of speakers for the next 2 hours to hear from them and to discuss the potential role of technology to advance multilingual education and support the development of quality teaching and learning for all. So let us now move to the opening session of the webinar without further ado, for which we have 3 distinguished guests to kick off this morning's session. Now, first, I have the great honor to invite His Excellency, Mr. Konkar M. Tal, the Ambassador of Bangladesh and Permanent Delegate to UNESCO. Your Excellency, Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Madam Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education. My dear colleague, His Excellency Mr. Umid Shadiev, Ambassador of Uzbekistan. Madame Niveen Khaled, Director, International Organization for La Francophonie. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Shubha Shakal, a very good morning to all of you. In 1999, UNESCO declared 21st February as the International Mother Language Day and recognized the value of multilingualism in our lives. I take this opportunity to thank UNESCO for providing us with a platform to reunite once again in the spirit of promoting cultural diversity through linguistic expressions. I further congratulate the UNESCO member states for joining us at this 23rd commemoration of the day. Excellencies, Bangla-speaking population around the globe attaches great importance to the observance of the International Mother Language Day. On this day, the people of Bangladesh mourn in remembrance of the martyrs of 1952 who sacrificed their lives to establish their justified right of their mother language, Bangla. I pay my deep homage to all the martyrs who devoted themselves for protecting their own language from intrusion, oppression, and forced extinction. This year, we are observing the day aligning with the theme, using technology for multilingual learning, challenges and opportunities. I must thank the Team UNESCO for choosing a very timely and pertinent theme for this year, particularly at a time when we are all painfully aware of the challenges posed by COVID-19. Technology has been our response to many of these challenges in the last 2 years of pandemic. We have seen the use of technology in our workspaces and academic institutions. E-learning has exponentially evolved to support our collective goal to ensure education for all. In the COVID years, 1.2 billion children from 186 countries received education through different online platforms. It is indeed technology that kept us connected and going. Excellencies, the education sector of Bangladesh was no different. In the last 2 years, our children have adopted themselves with the e-learning methods at all levels. Even at the post-COVID time, we successfully contained the dropout rate in both primary and secondary levels. Students received their stipends through mobile financing platforms, e-books were made available, and the academic institutions were allocated with additional budgetary support to procure e-learning tools. The far-sighted policy of technological advancement supported through the Digital Bangladesh program has ensured access to internet for all students. It's our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina who led the whole drive of digital transformation right from the front. In this initiative, we did not forget the needs of the children in distress, especially the children who were forcibly displaced from Myanmar and temporarily sheltered in Bangladesh. We have supported them with education in their language. Combining artificial intelligence with e-learning is a much deliberated upon topic today. We need to unleash the potentials of AI, certainly with some caveats, to revolutionize the education sector, to address the shortage of qualified teachers, improve the quality of study materials, develop e-books and interesting toolkits, to name a few. I must also laud UNESCO's promotion of distant learning, open science, and guidance for AI in recent times in this regard. Internet has become the major source of learning for both students and non-students alike. And for an overwhelming majority of the global population, Internet language is not their mother language. That's why we see the increasing use of AI-based applications like Google Translate. Already, the tech giants are funding top universities in research and development as they see e-learning as a huge business potential. In 2019, global edtech investment was $18.66 billion US, and COVID has propelled the projected investment to $325 billion by 2025. While we all realize the importance of technology in education, we must address the need to ensure access to e-learning for all. Not all the member states has the same infrastructural capacity or technology at their disposal. We need to address the digital divide. Use of technology will help overcome the challenges of multilingual learning. It is time we focus on them and ensure quality education for the underprivileged. We must make e-learning a global public good. Our collective approach should combine inclusion, intelligence, and innovation, which would help them receive education in their languages. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now I have the pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Umid Sadiev, Ambassador and Permanent Delegate of the Republic of Uzbekistan to UNESCO. I believe His Excellency will be connected by...
Yes, good morning.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madame Stefania Giannini, Your Excellency Ambassador Honker Talha, Madame Khaled, the participants of panel discussions, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, bonjour, and good morning. I am pleased to join this prominent panel today to commemorate the 2022 International Mother Language Day in UNESCO. We are celebrating the 23rd edition, and this day has already become one of the dearest ones within the UN system. First of all, I would like to commend the leadership of education sector led by ADG Ms. Stefania Giannini and the leadership of delegation of Bangladesh led by my dear colleague Ambassador Talha, and as well as other stakeholders for their efforts to bring us together on this important occasion. We have a series of events, panel discussions, cultural and video performances, and Uzbekistan is proud to be able to contribute to this noble endeavor. Like many other events, second year in a row, we are celebrating this International Day online, and we are here thanks to the technology. During the ongoing pandemic that derailed our traditional lives, the technology helped humanity in keeping our communications alive. In fact, right now, I am addressing this panel from confinement in my apartment. And in the last couple of years, distance information sharing tools have developed at an unprecedented pace, and we got used to live in this virtual life despite social and other challenges. When we refer to the global health crisis at UNESCO, one of the first things that comes to mind is education, because this sector has been hit hard by the pandemic. Given the essential role of technology to ensure continuity of learning, today's topic, using technology for multilingual learning, challenges and opportunities, helps us to address this issue even wider from a different angle, promoting multilingualism in education. We have no doubt about the significance of multilingualism in education, its irreplaceable position to build coherent and harmonious societies, especially in the countries like mine, where more than 130 nationalities and ethnic groups have been coexisting throughout centuries. But how can we ensure inclusive learning based solely on technology? What steps should be taken on a country level and internationally? These are the questions that we have to address together, joining our efforts in our way to achieve the SDG 4. Fully supporting the fellow ambassador who spoke before me, I also would like to touch upon some key aspects of using technologies in education. First, I would like to highlight the advantages of technology-based learning. When our kindergartens, schools, and universities closed under the pandemic's restrictions, we mobilized radio and television, as well as internet to ensure continuity of learning, including multilingual teaching. Over the time, there has been produced a pre-recorded metadata that could be repeatedly used by students anytime to enhance their knowledge. That also expands the reach of audience manifold. For example, in Uzbekistan, the schools are fully transferred back to traditional in-person learning. But at the same time, we're continuing online teaching for those students who are interested in additional studying. We're continuing to enrich the pre-recorded material base as a part of our strategy to mitigate the impact of possible future necessities. Another important aspect, part of our teachers more or less learned how to utilize the opportunities of technology in teaching. In today's technology-driven world, sooner or later we will come to this, and I think the pandemic somehow accelerated this process. Of course, we have faced and are still facing some challenges in distant learning, including multilingual teaching. First of all, as Ambassador also mentioned, the levels of access to learning technologies differ a lot among the developed, developing, and low-income countries. We should take bold joint steps to shrink this huge gap through investing more on the development of internet and air transmission, as well as providing necessary equipment, especially in rural areas, mostly inhabited by ethnic minorities. Second, more teachers still lack experience and do not know how to use technology in distant teaching at all. Here, the relevant stakeholders, first of all, governments, should take the lead to enhance their technological literacy. The last but not least is the quality of education and content in distant learning, especially when it comes to multilingual teaching. I think one of the most efficient ways is to stimulate teachers for self-improvement and enriching their teaching skills in other languages. For instance, in my country, we have introduced a special incentive program And according to it, teachers who educate in the language other than their native language, their salary base will be raised up to 50%. And if they work in rural areas, they get additional 30% salary increase to this. Excellencies, dear colleagues, indeed, our countries have been taking necessary steps at their capacity to cope with such challenges, but there is still a big room for improvement, as well as expanding international cooperation. Here, I would like to thank UNESCO education sector that foresaw the potential problems in the beginning of the pandemic and led the globally joint efforts involving governments, international organizations, private sector, and NGOs, and many others. Most importantly, UNESCO has tirelessly been calling all countries to look for possibilities for investing more on education, inclusion, and multilingualism while they build up their post-crisis development strategies. To conclude, I would like to reiterate the strong commitment of Uzbekistan to make every effort in achieving SDG 4 nationally, regionally, and globally. I think one of the great occasions in this regard will be the World Conference on Early Childhood Education that my country is hosting in November of this year. It will be a great opportunity to explore new opportunities to address the challenges in education, especially preschool teaching, and we look forward to organizing this important UNESCO event on the highest level possible together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now I have the great pleasure in inviting Ms. Nivine Khaled, the Director of the French Language and Diversity of Francophone Cultures International Organization of Francophonie. So Ms. Khaled, the floor is yours.
Merci à vous.
Thank you very much. Madam ADG for Education, dear ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to one and all. I'm honored to represent Her Excellency, the Secretary General of the IOF on this 23rd International Mother Language Day, and that is Madame Louise Mushikiwabo. I should also like to thank UNESCO for this fruitful cooperation that has been established between our two institutions when it comes to celebrating the International Mother Language Day. And I think it pays this, I think, attests to all of those who are tirelessly working to defend their language. And in particular, I'd like to just acknowledge what was said by the ambassador of Bangladesh, who was at the origin of this commemoration. I think this Mother Language Day is also a chance for us to remember how very important it is to us, to our institution, to maintain linguistic and cultural diversity. That is part of our very identity in Francophone nations. This diversity is also at the heart of the Francophone project. The French language, which is now being developed on all five continents in a mosaic of cultures and languages, and I think on a cultural level, this diversity can also represent our Creole culture, Latin culture, Arabic culture, and Black culture, and so many other identities as well. This year, our theme is using technology for multilingual learning, challenges and opportunities, and I think this is perfectly in harmony with the objectives of the OIF, which fully shares these deliberations concerning the issues of teacher training and access to equipment and content for learning, but also the new teaching practices that are being generated by the digital world, and that has been accelerated, rightly or wrongly, by the health crisis that we're going through. And our deliberations have also been accompanied by certain programmatic actions put at the service of some of our citizens. Let me go through some of them for you. For example, the IFEF institution called ELAN, the IFEF being the Francophonie Institute for Education and Training, which encourages the promotion of mother language through initiatives as a foundation of education systems. Secondly, I could talk about the support for linguistic policies of our member countries, particularly in multilingual countries. Thirdly, there is one of our flagship projects projects, and that is the Teacher Mobility Project launched this year by OIF, which is aiming to respond to the teaching needs for teaching and learning of French in multilingual education systems in the member countries of Francophonie. And currently, this Teacher Mobility Project has been successfully rolled out in Rwanda and recently in Ghana. I also just wanted to mention, finally, two initiatives that promote linguistic diversity. The first one is called Langue en Dialogue, and the idea of this is to support any original and high impact awareness raising initiatives in the French speaking world. And it also looks at specific contents for teachers, either French as a second language or French as a foreign language, through artistic activities, creative or fun activities, all put at the service of multilingual learning. And lastly, the Tempo Traduction initiative, which is about the literary production of the Francophone world, which is being supported by the translation and publication of literary works in different partner languages of the Francophonie. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express the hope that we can use this Mother Language Day to get us talking more in all of our languages. Let it open the way, pave the way to new actions in the field, enabling mother languages to thrive, living in cohabitation, and to fully flourish alongside French, because all of this contributes to our linguistic diversity and I think pays tribute to its richness and generosity. I also just wanted to end by thanking our partners in UNESCO and thanking the speaker Bushra Bakhti Adra from Lebanon, who is not only the president of the ANEFL, the National Association of French Teachers in Lebanon, but also of the FIPF, the International Federation of French Teachers, who will be talking about her project CLIC a little later on. I just wanted to thank you, one and all, to wish you all the success throughout this International Mother Language Day. Thank you to one and all.
Thank you very much, Madam Khaled.
Inviting Ms. Stefania Giannini, our Assistant Director General of Education, for her welcoming remarks and to ask her to set the scene for this morning's webinar. Stefania, the floor is yours.
Grazie mille, cara Maki, e benvenuti a tutti e a tutte alla Giornata Internazionale della Lingua Materna. Excellence, les ambassadeurs du
Excellency, Ambassador of Bangladesh and Uzbekistan, Madam Director of the French Language and Diversity of Francophone Cultures at the OIF. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the opening of this International Mother Language Day 2022. Unfortunately, once again, we're celebrating this event in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that the situation has evolved significantly over the past year, with most schools that have been reopened worldwide. However, over 600 million students in 44 countries are still affected by partial school closures, and therefore they have to follow part of their studies in hybrid format. This shows our dependency on technology to ensure the continuity of learning. This is something we've seen since the beginning of the pandemic. And we also thought that the obvious choice for a topic for this day would be the use of technology for multilingual learning, so that we can look at the challenges and opportunities of these types of technology. Now, as we know, this pandemic has accelerated inequalities, but it has also generated innovation and new partnerships. For example, those that have been highlighted by our Excellencies, ambassadors and directors. Now, millions of children have not been able to access remote learning during school closures, which in some cases lasted over one entire school year. Now, this is an unprecedented situation. And the most vulnerable and most marginalized groups are those who have been the most severely affected. There's a risk that 24 million children never return to school. And these children will be added to 260 million children who risk never returning to school. Now, the lack of digital content in mother language, particularly for children, may lead to learning losses and exclusion. Teachers have had to use digital tools in languages that they may not necessarily speak fluently. And therefore, we need to chart a different course forward to ensure that technology no longer leads to exclusion, but is a lever for access and quality of education. And I think that this is at the core of today's conference.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to go forward, we do believe that the digital transformation must be steered around what we believe are the core principles of inclusion and equity. The starting point is to ask how technology works for the most vulnerable ones, the most marginalized, including linguistic minorities. It's very well established based on neuroscience evidence, neurolinguistic evidences that learning in mother tongue at an early stage has a positive, dramatically positive impact on future academic achievement. It's crucial to ensure that technologies and contents reflect linguistic diversity and that children have access to devices and contents in appropriate languages they actually know and they actually feel as their own mother tongue. It's not by chance that as linguists we define mother tongue like this. It's crucial to support teachers on the other side, giving them the confidence, the opportunity and capacities to use new tools both in face-to-face and distance learning. And that means a commitment to multilingualism in technology, design, and use. Through the Global Education Coalition launched now 2 years ago, UNESCO facilitated partnerships to promote learning in mother tongue during the pandemic. Let me mention some concrete and successful example of this exercise and this policy we are implementing. This includes Translate a Story, a campaign to translate a children's story into multiple languages in order to encourage reading at home. All the books are now available on the Global Digital Library, a platform that you know for sure developed by NORAD and other partners. Uzbekistan was one of the first countries to respond positively to UNESCO's invitation to join this campaign. Let me thank the government and the ministries for that, with the translation of 130 children's books, as well as some interactive educational games. UNESCO and NORAD are also working with other countries, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Ivory Coast, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kyrgyzstan, Nepal, Palestine, and Qatar on this campaign. And we hope, we do believe that this is an open list and other countries will join in such important initiative. Such initiatives are steps towards bridging the major linguistic divide in cyberspace today. We know we are very far from the objective, but we know it is very much important to join forces to fill the gap. The availability of high quality reading resources in underserved languages worldwide is key now for advancing literacy and improving early learning. I wish to express gratitude to Bangladesh for its groundbreaking role in initiating and promoting International Mother Language Day. I know you are leading several celebrations today and over the course of the week here in New York and in Dhaka. The International Mother Language Institute we have in Dhaka is a UNESCO Category 2 center, is a regional hub leading research and initiatives to protect and promote all mother languages and encourage their use in education and learning. I see this as an important topic for the World Conference on Early Childhood Care and Education as well, to be generously hosted by Uzbekistan this November. And we're already working on that. We have an important platform to conclude, to raise global visibility and to encourage action through the Decade for Indigenous Languages launched this year and led by UNESCO, as you know. Indigenous languages are among the most endangered in the world, and with them, all cultures and ancestral knowledge systems are at risk of disappearing. The Decade aims to guarantee the right of Indigenous people to preserve, revitalize, and promote their languages. That means their own identity, that means their own culture. Language is not simply a tool for communicate. Of course, it's important, this dimension, of course, the social dimension of languages and language as a faculty, cognitive faculty we have as human beings, but it's very much about a vehicle for our own identity and cultural heritage. And mainstreaming linguistic diversity and multilingualism into all sustainable development efforts is quite key to address many of the objectives of the 2030 agenda as a whole. Well, we must tap the full potential of digital technology to use and safeguard these languages, a gateway to protecting our linguistic and cultural diversity and to expanding opportunities for lifelong learning. Vi ringrazio molto per l'attenzione e vi auguro un'eccellente celebrazione della Giornata Internazionale della Lingua Madre.
Thank you very much, Stefania. A linguist and a language expert herself, who could be better than herself to introduce and set the scene for this webinar today. So we have a keynote message with us today from Ms. Mary Burns, the expert in teacher professional development and online learning from the Education Development Center. Her keynote will be delivered through a pre-recorded video. And after that video, her key message will be followed by a video on technology and education with focus on mother tongue. Now, Ms. Mary Burns is a senior learning technologist at Education Development Center. Mary's work traverses every level of the education system, from policy development to program design and implementation to directly supporting teachers in classrooms. She has worked in close to 100 countries and in every continent. She has designed national education technology strategies for government, coached, developed, and implemented online learning programs in many countries. Mary, as a practitioner who does research, she has authored books, blogs, articles, book chapters, and peer-reviewed articles on educational technology and teacher professional development. So with this introductory remarks, I ask my colleagues to show her pre-recorded video keynote message and followed by the video on our theme today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Burns, and I'm a senior learning technologist at Education Development Center in Boston. I'm also the author of the background paper on educational technology for the 2023 Global Education Monitoring Report. It's an honor to be here, and I'm sorry I could not make it in person. I'm knowledgeable about technology, but not mother tongue languages. But this is a topic that is personal to me. My parents were Irish, and my father was born in 1919 in the Gaeltacht, or the Irish-speaking region of Ireland that you see here marked in green. As I'm sure many of you know, England invaded Ireland in 1169 and through the centuries imposed the English language on an Irish-speaking population. This map shows the extent of native Irish speakers in 1926, 4 years after Irish independence from England. And in 2007. There are almost no native Irish speakers left in the Irish-speaking region where my father was born. My parents could not speak Irish, nor can I. I cannot access a whole part of my heritage because Ireland's mother tongue has been lost to my parents, and thus to me. And a huge accelerant in the disappearance of the Irish language since 1926 has been technology, specifically radio, TV, and increasingly the internet. Technology has promised inclusivity, but linguistically it has delivered exclusivity. There are approximately 7,000 languages across the world, 35% of which are endangered. Almost 100% of internet content is dominated by a handful of languages, and one language is most dominant of all, English. Over 60% of all internet content is in English. This means the internet is largely an English language medium, and this linguistic hegemony is a threat to other languages, especially endangered ones. Technology is a threat, but can also help to begin to preserve endangered languages in 3 ways. First, by identifying and documenting the status of the world's languages, as UNESCO has done with its World Atlas of Endangered Languages. Second, by providing tools, platforms, a community, and resources at scale to empower traditionally overlooked communities to create their own educational content in their own languages to promote more culturally responsive and linguistically inclusive education. I've listed just a few of these initiatives and programs here. Finally, as you are doing here, technology can convene interested and committed stakeholders from across the globe through online platforms like this one, through video and social media to educate and influence policymakers so they can maintain and even slow the decline of mother tongue and native languages by sharing rich experiences, activities, ideas, and media. I wish you all the best as you tackle this difficult issue. Gahamaragat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Apologies, I understand the video to be shown next was moved to the second panel discussion. So hold on to your excitement for watching the video a little bit later. So now that I think the scene has been set and we are very much into the thematic area of this day today, we would like to move into the 2 panel discussions under 2 themes today. The first theme is on enhancing the role of teachers in the promotion of quality multilingual education, including in distance learning. And the second theme is on reflecting on technologies and potential to support multilingual teaching and learning. So for the first thematic panel, enhancing the role of teachers in promotion of quality multilingual education, the session will be moderated by my colleague, Mr. Carlos Vargas Tamez, the Chief of Section for Teachers, and will be introducing the panel and the panelists as well. So please allow me to hand over the screen to Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maki, for this introduction. And as you have mentioned, and we're very happy to begin the first panel focusing, as this event does, on teachers. As you know, International Mother Language Day celebrates the linguistic and cultural diversity of the world, and this year it focuses on teachers and the role that they play in the transmission of language, but also of the cosmovisions, the cultural practices that are expressed in and with the different languages. Without a doubt, interculturality and multilingualism are requisites for dialogue that need to be embedded in education, in all of its forms and all of its formats. And this panel, we will focus precisely on how to enhance the role of teachers in the promotion of quality multilingual education, including in distance learning. For that, we will look at the use of technologies, old and new, including traditional media such as radio and television, to promote multilingual teaching and learning. The panel will highlight challenges and opportunities related to multilingual teaching and learning in light of the many issues that teachers are facing in the promotion of multicultural teaching. We will be hearing from speakers from Bangladesh, Lebanon, Indonesia, and Morocco. So let us begin then with Professor Abdur Rahim. He has worked and served for around 30 years in the Ministry of Education of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, and he's presently working as a professor of English at International Modern Language Institute, which is a Category 2 center dedicated precisely to the study of modern language. He is also a teacher trainer, so he is very well placed to share with us the potential of technology to assist teachers in supporting multilingual teaching and learning. So without any further ado, Mr. Abdur Rahim, the floor is yours, please.
Very good morning to all.
Good
Am I
morning.
clear? To all, please.
We can hear you, Professor Rahim.
Yes, very good morning to you all. Respected moderator, Chief Section for Teacher Development, UNESCO, fellow panelists from different countries, honorable dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings from International Mother Language Institute, Dhaka, Bangladesh. I am Professor Muhammad Abdur Rahim from International Mother Language Institute, Dhaka, Bangladesh. I am very much delighted to be a part of this discussion organized by UNESCO headquarters to celebrate the 23rd International Mother Language Day 2022. And I like to focus on this session on how to improve the professional quality of teachers using technology to ensure multilingual education and distance learning in the context of Bangladesh. At the very outset of my speech, I pay my deep homage and tribute to the martyrs who laid down their precious lives in the historic language movement on 21st February 1952. Due to their supreme sacrifices for establishing our mother tongue Bangla as a state language, we can now speak in Bangla freely. In this regard, I like to mention the dynamic and charismatic leadership of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, in the language movement. Bangladesh observes glorious Martyrs' Day and International Mother Language Day with solemnity and grandeur since its inception. We are committed to employ all our efforts to accelerate and promote mother languages with utmost priority on quality multilingual education along with linguistic diversity. We have 40 languages other than Bangla, our mother tongue, and we are working for all the languages that do minority have in our country. I do believe this international webinar is an appropriate platform to share the topic with other language centers around the world for the potential use of technology for our teachers to promote multilingual education. We hope this webinar will open new avenues in regard to documentation, revitalization, and preservation of mother tongues of the world, employing technological help. And I'm sure this will greatly benefit our teachers to impart quality multilingual education along with distance learning. We all know that COVID-19 caused a tremendous and fateful impact for the last 2 years, not only on the health sector, but also on business and education around the globe. In our country, all the institutions are shut down. During the pandemic situation, the teachers of our country somehow successfully continued online classes, covering 80 to 90% students. And it was possible because of the digitalization of our education started back to 2009 for making Bangladesh a digital country through using ICT to enhance the professional capacity of our teachers to gather technological knowledge. And during pandemic, they have used their achieved skills effectively. As a result, the teachers and students of our country did not face much difficulties for the continuation of their education. Although it was a big challenge for the teachers, but finally they came out successfully to teach the students through online classes. The Directorate of Secondary Higher Education, Ministry of Education, is implementing a number of programs for the teachers on technological know-how to disseminate their knowledge and experience for ensuring quality multilingual education along with distance learning. We hope to reach every student through available devices like mobile phone, tab, laptop, and other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Shikhok Batayon, Ghare Boshe Shiki, etc. The online classes are being telecasted on television and in radio as a part of distance learning in our country. Gradually, our students are trying to adjust with them by using digital technologies by themselves. The government of Bangladesh is committed to ensure quality and inclusive education for all the students by 2030, following the targets of SDG 4. The National Curriculum and Textbook Board, NCTB, an apex body of the government, already developed and published textbooks up to grade 3 for 5 ethnic community students in their mother tongue. And I think this is a great success of the government of Bangladesh to promote multilingual teaching and learning. And it was possible for the proper direction of our visionary leader, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, the Honorable Prime Minister of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. To ensure equitable and inclusive quality multilingual teaching and learning, the concerned departments of our country are conducting integrated continuous professional development training courses for all the teachers through using ICT. And we are expecting a satisfactory feedback from them to use technological knowledge and skill in their practical teaching learning activities. We have already started multilingual teaching and learning through training for the teachers of our country. As we all know that we have multimedia classes at the very starting of 2005 or before than that. In conclusion, I am expressing my heartiest gratefulness to UNESCO for providing opportunity for International Mother Language Institute, Dhaka, Bangladesh, to join us the Zoom webinar. And at this moment, I like to utter 2 great lines in Bangla from our memorable Ekushe song. Amar bhayer rokte rangano Ekushe February, ami ki bhulete pari, meaning we cannot forget my brothers who shed down their lives for mother tongue. Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator, for allowing me time to speak. Thank my co-panelists for your patient hearing to my presentation. Thanks everyone connected with us. Long live mother tongues of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rahim. Indeed. Let's celebrate the indigenous languages. Thank you for your testimony. And with that, I will pass on to, before I pass on to Ms. Bucha Baghdadi, I would like to ask and remind our audience if they have any questions for this panel, they can be typed in the question and answer section of the screen. Thank you very much, Mr. Rahim. So let me now, thank you very much. Let me turn now to Ms. Bucha Baghdadi Adra. She has an extensive career in the education sector. Currently, she's the president of the National Association of Teachers of French in Lebanon and president of the Arab World Commission of the International Federation of Teachers of French. She has been, in that capacity, advisor to the Prime Minister, to Ministers of Education, including of the CONFEMEN. Elle va parler maintenant de une...
And she's going to talk to us now about a strategy called the pedagogical practice. And this is all about language teaching in the context of cultural and linguistic diversity. So we take this opportunity to learn more about the project and how it addresses some of the challenges for teaching. Madam Baghedadi, you have the floor. Over to you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates, before getting into the heart of my presentation, allow me first of all to thank the organizers of this event, particularly Madame Neuro, and in particular the OIF, as represented today by Madame Pietri and Madame Khaled. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to take part in today's events. And we are delighted to see such an eminent panel representing education from around the world. Now, before getting into my presentation, I just wanted to share my screen, if I could, dear moderator. Yes, please go ahead, madam. Are you able to see my screen? Yes, we can. So I want to talk about click. Now, if I click here, am I able to see this? It's going to come up in a moment. Yes, what you're going to see here is the planisphere. We're going to go around the world in 24 clicks, and this is essentially what my presentation is going to be about. And this is one of the activities that has been organized by my organization in responding to a call for projects from the Association of French Teachers in Lebanon. From a technical perspective, I'm not actually sure if this is going to work. I'm hoping if we click, will it start working? Yes, but I do think we need to expand that screen, make it larger. There we go. Now you should be able to see here on the screen this map here. And I'll be getting into this in a little more detail at the end of my presentation. Very well, thank you. So just to come back to what I had planned to discuss.
Madame Bouchra, s'il y a besoin, je peux passer votre diapo à votre place.
I can play your slides for you if you wish, madam. No, I should be able to run my slides from here. Thank you. Very well. This now looks like it's working. Are you able to see my slides? It looks like it's opening, yes. Very well. So we're bolstering the teacher's role in the promotion of education, including in distance learning. And this is actually part of our axis number 1 of continuing education: French language, cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, and IT tools and interactive distance learning. Now, as part of this first axis, we undertook 17 different workshops and training seminars, and these were organized around 2 cultural teaching-focused events. They brought together some 50-odd experts, trainers, teachers, researchers, and academic specialists from around the region. 781 participants in total, and all of these projects were actually part of the national, regional, international context that are being more and more characterized by upheavals and an acceleration of movement and of people, both domestically and across borders. And given these contexts, the strategies, methods, and techniques of teaching and learning designed to improve the quality of the language teaching and communication with the students in their mother tongue, as well as in other languages, like second or foreign languages. And these are based on the very first years of learning in the mother tongue, using tools for expressing their identity, for an exchange and transfer of knowledge across the different cultures, wherever they are in the world. And these strategies, we think, are to be privileged when it comes to our teaching practices, because we need to take into consideration the multicultural context, not only in the Arab world, but elsewhere. And that is why we think this will overall enhance the quality of teaching and higher education teaching as well. But as a support to these, we also had to raise awareness as to the IT tools that can enhance teaching, but this is covered in each of the workshops. We also raised awareness as to the different corpus of knowledge and expertise. And this, again, was something that was worked on through our seminars and training workshops. The participants in these workshops were able to put into practice some of these techniques through by using these innovative methods and incorporating it then into their own methods. Given that each context is different and there are different specific objectives for each of these different training workshops, our association is working not only to promote the potential of the cultural and intercultural dimensions of teaching, but also to raise awareness as to their belonging in the national communication, but also to push or to nourish that desire to learn more and to open up more to other cultures and contribute to this idea of cohabitation, of living together in harmony. Now, I don't want to go too much into all of the different topics that were covered in those. It could be, for example, IT teaching and distance learning, but given that we don't have too much time ahead of us, I won't go into that in detail, but I did want to mention some of the training modules that would put online during the lockdown phase, and obviously Lebanon was going through such a difficult time. But thanks to the professionalism of our trainers, we were able to run these training workshops, which I think actually attest to their commitment to their commitment, but also to all of the target participants and their spirit of resilience that they were able to really give their best for the International Francophonie Day in 2021, and continue working on these innovative and yet simple projects when it came to teaching in the mother language, and also by undertaking productions and events that were collaborative and participative. And this CLICK project, I think, is just one very successful example of the kind of things that we were doing. So here you have, then we were able to invite French teachers from around the Arab-speaking world, and we launched this project called CLICK, about highlighting one's heritage, even during the pandemic. And this was very closely linked to this belief in our own heritage, in our mother tongue, in our own cultural specificity. And so teachers were invited who'd taken part in our online training undertaken by NF. And here again, we saw that the role of training was not only just training for training's sake, but it was able to set up the kind of competence that had been acquired during those and roll them out into something new. And that is why the French Teachers League, for example, was able, during the period of confinement, of of lockdown to actually really contribute by publishing their innovative teaching practices and methods. Also they were able to share how they've been able to take on board the importance of the mother language in their teaching in a multilingual environment, and how they used different platforms and digital tools during their teaching in that time. And this meant that they were able to discover in a virtual format all the different aspects of their cultural, artistic, culinary, architectural heritage in Lebanon, but also in different countries. They did this through their various different techniques and through the digital tools that they discovered during their online training sessions. They also, I think, helped to raise awareness as to the importance of heritage, how it needs to be promoted, the use of digital tools for producing interactive documents, and to share as to the importance and the contribution that can be made of these novel teaching practices before, during, and after COVID-19. Forgive me for interrupting, but if we could just wrap up in the last minute. Yes. Well, I think that I can say that this project was possible thanks to all of the cooperation among myself, but also with two different specialists in educational technologies. And here we really did work hand in hand, and it was Dr. Aida El Souife and Rima Abdel Fattah Mubayed, who without their input was not going to be possible. Furthermore, they had some dozen teachers who had been supporting us in the rollout of these, and also ran some pilot experiments, and we were able to make this a success thanks to their input. And they actually really did help us dig deeper in our reflection and our research into how to roll out these projects and activities, and to focus on the new different health, social, and economic data that were going to help us gain a deeper understanding of the impact of projects like this. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, Madam, that does bring us to the end of our time. Thank you very, very much for that presentation.
If you can stop the presentation, if you please. We can then, thank you very much, Madam Baghdadi. We can then turn to Mr. Aminuddin Aziz, who is our next speaker. He is a linguist from Universitas Pendidikan, Indonesia, and he has occupied different posts in the university. Currently, he is, apart from being a professor of linguistics, he is the head of National Language Development and Cultivation at the Ministry of Education and Culture from the Republic of Indonesia. He will be speaking about teachers, most certainly, and rethinking their role in promoting quality technology mediated multilingual learning and teaching. So let's hear from Mr. Aziz. Thank you very much for joining us. The floor is yours for 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you, moderator. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizing committee, excellencies, distinguished guests, panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Before I present the key points in the topic that has been asked me to discuss, let me share with you the context of situations of Indonesia, whereon I will focus the discussion. Therefore, the audience will feel clear about the situations from the outset. Indonesia is an archipelagic country consisting of more than 17,000 islands. It is inhabited by various ethnic groups whose members speak different local languages. Indonesia is the second most multilingual country in the world after Papua New Guinea. According to a series of studies carried out by the Agency for Language Development and Cultivation, it was found that there are 718 local languages actively spoken by each respective speech community. This number alone has given us an impression about how multilingual Indonesia is.
except in some very remote and isolated areas, almost all Indonesian people will speak more than one language. First, they are competent speakers of the languages of their own mother tongue, which are naturally acquired from the childhood, and they begin using it to communicate in their surroundings. Second, they will also speak the Indonesian language that functions as the uniting or working language used across ethnic groups throughout the country. Indonesian language also becomes the official language used in the public services. This national language is learned as early as the students enter kindergartens and is made as a compulsory subject since primary schools until higher education. The question about the important roles of teachers as agents of change in the process of learning in general and in language learning in particular has prevailed for decades, and it will still continue to become a burning topic of discussions in the future. The answers to the question sound very similar, and of course, there is no doubt about the vital roles of teachers in teaching. However, some disputes and hot debates are still found on how such an important role is to be implemented in the classroom. Some teachers believe that teachers have to play as knowledge imparters, and they consequently become the main sources of learning for their learners. Therefore, learning should be learner-centered. Teacher-centered, sorry. However, some other researchers believe that teachers should only act as facilitators and let learners find their avenues to learn what they are actually interested in and what they need to achieve in their learning goals. In this latter case, teachers will therefore only provide relevant learning inputs, motivate them so that they know their learning goals exactly. In other words, the teachers will have to facilitate their learners in achieving their goals accordingly. It might be in this respect that technology can help accelerate the achievement of students' learning goals. With respect to learning facilities, in reference to the Indonesian case, the pandemic COVID-19 has opened up to the eyes of the Indonesian policymakers at all levels, from the central to the local government. It appears that facilities for learning across the regions in the archipelago are not equally well equipped. Many are far from being sufficient, and the environment are not conducive for learning. When the pandemic has forced teachers to conduct learning teaching through online modes, they are faced with new dilemma. On the one hand, they have to keep learning and teaching processes on, but on the other hand, many of them are not yet familiar with and not confident to use technology in their teaching. According to the data in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, less than 50% of around 3 million teachers have been certified. This is still a low proportion, in fact. Certified teachers mean that they have obtained the minimum qualification to teach and are categorized as professional teachers. Of these certified teachers, unfortunately, not all are technology literate. This has posed a new problem, obviously. To tackle down this issue, the Indonesian government, through the Ministry of Education, has launched some initiatives to assure learning and teaching to take place. The initiatives include, for example, the provision of technology facilities for both teachers and students, provision of training sessions for teachers that focus on the use of technology for learning, the creation of various fora for sharing materials and experiences among teachers. These initiatives seem to be quite effective in improving teachers' confidence of using technology for learning processes and in assuring the learning to take place in spite of the fact that the pandemic is still around. Now I will turn to address the issue of language learning and teaching and the role of teachers as agents of change. There is a very fundamental question to be posed here. Is technology really a conditio sine qua non or prerequisite to achieve a quality language learning, where by using technology in their teaching, teachers can act as agents of change? Let's assume that the answer to the above question is yes. It is a yes when we believe that face-to-face interactions in the classrooms are no longer possible. In such a circumstance, teachers have no choices other than adopting technology to mediate or facilitate learning. However, this answer entails further questions. What materials do they have to teach? Will the materials, the teaching strategies, and the evaluation or assessment be the same as when offline modes are held? How about if teachers and students are not fully confident in using technology? Assuming that both sides, teachers and students, are confident enough in using technology, then some adjustments are required. In order to avoid learning fatigue due to their having to look into monitors for long periods of time, for example, teachers will have to select only relevant materials to be taught. In other words, the curriculum has to be redesigned and adapted, namely by focusing only on the development of fundamental skills that are necessary for life. For example, through the integration of many materials. And this is one measure that the Indonesian Ministry of Education has taken, that is simplifying the contents of the curriculum. Through the use of technology, language teachers can become more selective in choosing only relevant materials. They can make use of materials from other subjects to develop learners' language skills as well. This is what we call as language across curriculum. At the same time, language teachers can demonstrate to their students how technology has made life even easier by representing that Internet of Things has made the impossible become possible. By this, the language teachers can convince their students that they can optimize and manifest their innate capacities into realities by the support of technology. Seeing such realities, the students will feel motivated and their confidence will improve accordingly. Therefore, the changes that the teachers are trying to instill into students through the use of technology in their teaching are more oriented towards the cultivation of the changes on the students' mindset. In other words, teachers' ways of teaching through technology will inspire the students and lead to the changes in their mindset. The students will have better attitudes to learning and will see the potential and the promising benefits of technology for their life. I will finally argue that with the vital roles that the language teachers have during the learning, they can convey the message to the students that changes in the mindset toward a more positive view about their potential can change the directions of their lives. This is one of the exemplary roles that language teachers can play as agents of change. In the multilingual situation, such as in Indonesia, language teachers will face even more challenging complexities.
Mr. Aziz, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could we wrap up in 1 minute, please?
Yeah, 1 minute more, right? The students bring into classroom their own cultural values, which will affect classroom interaction and communication. However, the teachers can utilize these cultural differences to enrich their teaching materials and put them together into proportional mix. Technology can help blend the variation to result in a balanced taste of materials. By so doing, the language teachers can demonstrate their roles in creating a harmony in the classroom where they develop positive attitudes among students, such as mutual respect, collaboration, and mutual considerations. Language teachers can also be benefited by the availability of material from local languages. The use of such contextual materials taken from local languages can help preserve the existence of local languages, which will be appreciated by the local communities. I believe that this adoption of such a strategy can be regarded as a revolutionary approach in the classroom, where language teachers have optimized their role as agents of change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aziz, for this presentation, certainly highlighting the centrality of teachers in mother language and multilingual education. Thank you very much. Let me now turn to Ms. Malika Butalev. She's a scholar in Amazigh Studies, Languages and Culture from the Faculty of Letters and Humanities of Ibn Agadir. She also has done research is currently working on research on women and the Amazigh cultural heritage. And she is the author of Poetry and Short Stories in Amazigh. In 2016, she was awarded the National Prize for Amazigh literature. And now she will be speaking about the teaching practices from a distance in the Moroccan school, with the case of the Amazigh language. Ms. Malika Boutelek, the floor is yours for 5 minutes, please.
Bonjour, merci infiniment. Merci.
Good morning, thank you very much. And thank you, dear moderator, ladies and gentlemen, panelists. I'd also like to thank the organizers of this event, and particularly Madame Loro, who has given me the opportunity to share an overview of what I'm doing in 5 minutes on the teaching of the Amazigh language from my perspective as a teacher of the Amazigh language. I'd also like to thank the technical team who've been working on making this event broadcast, but above all, I'd like to thank all of you for being here and to wish you a very happy International Mother Language Day 2022. The topic of my presentation will be remote learning practices in Moroccan schools, and particularly the case of the Amazigh language. The field of education is one of the most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And in order to compensate for the effects of lockdown, many schools in Morocco and worldwide, universities, academies, etc., have opted for e-learning or remote teaching, and particularly in developing countries such as Morocco, which has made significant progress in terms of the digital transformation and the development of remote training, learning and teaching practices to ensure continuity of learning since the beginning of lockdown. Now, what is the situation of teaching in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, in Morocco, in alignment with the royal guidelines, governmental measures, the Ministry of National Education and Professional Training issued instructions for the rollout of remote learning. Now, this experience led to a forced shift to remote learning in a context of emergency, and it also led to its generalization, which was imposed to students and teachers alike. Now, I'd like to present the advantages of remote learning. First of all, it enables us to maintain contact with learners. Remote learning allows teachers to remain in contact with students. It also means that teachers are available. It ensures spatial and temporal flexibility because teachers are able to hold classes wherever and whenever they are available. And it also allows students to learn at their own pace. As we all know, students don't progress at the same pace. You need to take into account their capacity to concentrate and their skills. Now, I'll try to briefly summarize the constraints now of remote learning. The first is a lack of interaction. Secondly, there's less engagement. There's the issue of loneliness. And students having to stay in front of a screen all day can also lead to health problems for eyes, back, etc. And there's also a limitation in terms of pedagogical follow-up. Now, there are also external constraints. For example, a lack of training among teachers. Although teachers may be deeply committed to ensuring continuity of learning, some of them may face issues when it comes to using technology. Then there's also the issue of the educational level of the majority of families, particularly in rural areas and impoverished areas. I have been a teacher in rural areas, and therefore I've been able to experience this firsthand. Sadly, there's a lack of logistics and devices, particularly in disadvantaged areas and rural areas. Many families are not able to access a computer, a phone, electricity, or internet, which would allow their children to follow classes remotely. There's a lack of technology available in some schools as well. Some teachers are therefore faced with this situation and have to work with the means available to them. Now, what about e-learning in terms of the teaching of Amazigh language? Well, since Amazigh was incorporated into the school curriculum, the IRCAM, the Moroccan Royal Institute of Amazigh Culture, which aims to foster the promotion of this culture in all areas of public life. This institute prepared digital pedagogical material, given the importance of technology in the language learning process, and particularly in the context of the Amazigh language. These materials include CDs, digital illustrated dictionaries, and also applications available on the Institute's website. The Moroccan Royal Institute of Amazigh Culture also contributed to the GENIE project, which aims to generalize information and communication technologies in education in Morocco. The resources used to teach Amazigh language in the context of pandemic has involved stakeholders in the field of Amazigh teaching who have been using different tools for remote teaching. And they've also used other tools, such as classes which have been available on the website of the ministry, and also classes that are available on the Moroccan TV channels. Many groups were also created on Facebook and WhatsApp in order for students and teachers to remain in touch. And this was enabled by educational stakeholders becoming members of regional associations for the teaching of for Amazigh language teachers. Now, I'll give you a brief overview of the technological resources that have been used. I had sent a PowerPoint to support my presentation, but I'm not sure if it's been shared. Here you can see a graph which shows the technological resources that we've been using. For example, social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., recordings, audio files, exercises, feedback. Then there's also the thematic platform, which was developed by the ministry, and it can be used by learners. And it provides video materials for classes, summaries, etc. Then there are also television channels, which are one of the main sources of learning for students because they're available to everyone. There are also video platforms which provide recordings of classes. Then there are also meeting platforms which enable students to take part in interactive courses. But unfortunately, these platforms are not as used by our students. Now, lastly, I'd like to share a quick sample of my classes, but unfortunately, I don't think we have time. So I'd like to thank you for your attention and for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Thank you very much, Madame Boutaleb.
I'm sorry we are running out of time, but we will be able to share that PowerPoint with our participants. Likewise, we will be able to address all of the questions. As you've seen in the chat, there have been different questions and answers, many of them addressed to the 4 panelists that we have had today. So just if I may ask our panelists to have a look at the questions so that we can answer them, that would be very good in terms of time. So please do bear with us, and please find the answer to your questions in the chat that our panelists will be answering. So just with that, let me thank Mr. Raim, Madame Baghdadi, Mr. Aziz, and Madame Boutalev for their insights in this forum. I think they have been very rich in highlighting the role that teachers play in the promotion of mother language and interculturality and multilingualism. So just to say that we have heard from multiple experiences highlighting the issue of bridging teacher training with the development of materials in mother tongue, like the case in Bangladesh. We've seen the heritage entering also the scene in Lebanon. We've also seen in Indonesia this idea and the centrality of the teachers in translating the world, but also translating the word, by doing that, including indigenous languages in teaching and learning. And last but not least, Madame Boutalev has reminded us of the important part that culture plays in this translation. The implication of the ministries of arts, the ministries of culture, is also an important lesson for the development of policies that will strengthen mother language for sure. So with that, let me thank you. Thank you once again for your time, and I'll pass it on to my colleague Maki Hayashikawa for the next panel. Please, Maki.
Great. Thank you very much, Carlos, for moderating this first thematic panel discussion. I know it's indeed a very rich sharing, and unfortunately our time is never enough and on our side. But I believe these valuable experiences from across the 4 countries have really inspired our audience today. And I know that we're already taking advantage of the technology made available to us by using this virtual platform to leave your questions and also the panelists to be able to respond. Sometimes this would not be possible if it were an in-person meeting, so let us take this advantage of the technology here. So now I know the time is running fast, so we turn to the second panel discussion on the theme reflecting on technologies and their potential to support multilingual teaching and learning. This panel discussion will be moderated by Mr. Fenchen Miao, Chief of the Unit for Technology and Artificial Intelligence in Education, also here at UNESCO. So Fenchen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maki. Dear distinguished participants, dear colleagues, welcome to panel 2. The topic for panel 2 is about reflecting on technology and their potential to support multilingual teaching and learning. The objective set out by our colleague for this panel is to discuss action needed to design and deliver technology-enabled multilingual teaching and learning programs. But before that, I would like to remind that the more fundamental perspective than the use of technology to support multilingual teaching and learning, to me, is the humanistic vision to the relation between the digitalization and the mother tongue languages, because we know that the digitalization is dominated by a very limited number of mainstream languages, and the rapid process of digitalization accelerates the language colonization and the demise of indigenous language. So I think the humanistic principle promoted by UNESCO highlighted that the use of technology should promote and protect and respect the basic human rights and the basic human dignity. Among the human rights, I think one of the most important human rights is to living and learning based on mother languages. So the use of technology in education and beyond education should never do harm to the preservation and the learning of indigenous language and mother tongue language. So I think this is very, very important that before we talk about the potential of technology for education, for multilingual teaching and learning, we should ask a very fundamental question. Technology is a problem or is a solution? And apparently technology can provide some solution, but before that, we should think the fundamental question technology is generating, and whether technology themselves can solve the problem. And we believe that human should be at the center to solve the problem. It's not the technology. And with this, we will have 4 panelists from different regions. Unfortunately, we don't have a female speaker or panelist in this panel. We should improve in the future. And these 4 panelists from Europe, from Africa, and also from Latin America, and also from the United States, will help us to explore the ways and the means to develop multilingual content that will serve education and serve the learning of mother language, but also the learning of other languages. So we will start with a video produced by Bangkok office, representing somehow the Asia and the Pacific region. The video, the title of the video is T4P, Use Voice, Mother tongue-based multilingual education. Please, our colleague, please play the video.
My name is Orani Jaria Potnyam from Chiang Mai, Thailand. My mother tongue is Skor Karen. The main way I work for peace is through education. I help indigenous children receive a quality education in their first language. I support them to feel safe, secure, and to live harmoniously. Strengthening language skills will diminish prejudice and discrimination between cultures. I support the right to a quality education in the first language.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for playing the video. Now I would like to invite the first speaker of this panel, Mr. Ruela Bellasson, and he is the Honorary General Inspector at the French Ministry of Education and the President of the European Association for the Teaching of Chinese Language. 你好, 白先生. And the topic of his presentation is the added value of technology in promoting multilingual teaching and learning. Bai Xiansheng, you have the floor. And dear panelists, when you finish the speech, please turn off your audio. Thank you very much. You have the floor, Mr. Bellasson.
苗凤冲人先生您好. Tout d'abord, je voudrais
I should like to express my thanks to UNESCO and particularly to Mr. Feng Chung and for Madame Feng Chung for their invitation to take part in this International Mother Language Day event. I just wanted to go very briefly through these issues in 3 points. First is, what is the added value of technology in promoting the teaching and learning of languages? And so my first point is that the added value of technologies when it comes to teaching and learning languages is, first of all, of a pedagogical nature. And when I say pedagogical, I mean focused on the connection between the teacher and the learner. And this is possible because it enables the individual's profile to be better put into perspective for tailoring the teaching to their specific needs. And when it comes to podcasting in in education, I think that this actually enables a kind of outsourcing of learning. Podcasting enables a person who might have a difficulty speaking in one session to keep working on individual expression exercises and then later send that to their teacher. Podcasting is therefore a solution when it comes to differentiated pedagogy. For example, when you have different, very wide-ranging profiles of learners. I could give you an example of teaching Chinese in France. Now, in some regions in France, we find that we are teaching Chinese to classes which are made up of, on the one hand, native speakers of the foreign language, in other words, native speakers of the Chinese language. And then in the same classroom, you find non-native learners. And obviously, with such a heterogeneousness, you're going to have to tailor the teaching, and podcasting can help in this regard. My second point today is that the added value of technologies in teaching and learning of languages can also be didactic in nature. And here I'm talking about the relation between the teacher, the learner, and also the specificity of the knowledge that is to be taught and transmitted. And the example of Chinese language is particularly relevant in this case, because unlike other languages, Chinese actually contains two different bodies of knowledge. On the one hand, there's how to communicate in writing, in speech, just like English, French, Arab, whatever. But it also has the written system, which is a purely graphical dimension. And so these two bodies of knowledge are connected, and yet at the same time, they're also quite autonomous from one another in terms of how you progress, on how you acquire them, the difficulties that you encounter learning them. Yet this visuographical nature of the writing system in Chinese is actually perfectly suitable to some of the multimedia technologies that are out there, because when you learn you learn about the writing system in person in the classroom, there are limits to what you can do. But if a learner can view how a grapheme is created, learning the stroke order, the different parts that make it up, they can watch it again and again and again, which will facilitate their memorizing of the kanji in question. And in other words, it's not about the language learning per se, it's about the written language. And this is a very important part of Chinese language learning. And so here I think, again, this didactic nature of the IT tools can be very useful. And thirdly, I want to talk about MOOCs, massive open online courses. So the massive, the massive in massive open online courses obviously refers to the fact that we can disseminate the teaching across distance and reach potentially thousands of millions of learners in various different countries. And this opens up a whole new range of prospects when it comes to preserving languages or written systems that are actually threatened with extinction. I'd like to give you two examples today. First, these are actually joined by an INALCO project, which is the Paris University teaching Eastern languages and civilizations. And this I've already talked about the teaching of Chinese. Now let me talk about the Czech language. Our colleagues in INALCO, who are from the Czech department, used to having about 30 students in their classes, but thanks to the MOOC, which was launched in 2016 and is now renewed every year, thanks to that, they've suddenly seen their numbers rise to more than 3,000 learners per year for their Czech classes. This means that they can envisage a whole new level for their teaching that had hitherto been completely unknown. And the second example I wanted to talk to you about today is a MOOC that I'm currently developing in partnership with the Geneva University and with the Beijing University of Languages and Cultures and myself in ALCO. And this is a very unusual MOOC. It's about initiation to Dongba writing. And Dongba writing is a threatened written system, which is used by priests in the Yinlong region, by priests in the southeast of China. Now, what we are hoping to do is to reach out to potentially tens of thousands of learners, or at least as many of people who are interested in learning Dongba. This is available in German, in French, and in English, and in Chinese. And so this MOOC is rather unusual. So we can probably reach out ultimately to hundreds of thousands of potential learners who would like to sign up to this MOOC. And our objective is to reach a threshold. I'm sorry, you have 1 minute to wrap up if you could. Thank you very much, yes. And so the idea is to reach a certain threshold of about 300 pictographic graphemes of the Dongba language, and to therefore help preserve this writing system, which is currently only used by a couple of hundred or perhaps a couple of thousand community members. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bellasson, to introduce the potential of technology. You specifically mentioned the potential of MOOCs. I think when we are gradually moving into the metaverse, we believe that MOOCs and online learning platform could provide hopefully a kind of a parallel, universe to preserve some language in danger. And I think this is really an area that we should further explore. Thank you very much. Now I have the great pleasure to introduce the second panelist, Mr. Joshua Malik. He is the technical consultant in ICT education with the Ministry of Education in Ghana. And previously, he's the former director of the Center for National Distance Learning and Open Schooling in the Ministry of Education in Ghana. If I'm not wrong, I have been working with Joshua for quite a few projects and very closely. I have the pleasure to give you the floor, Joshua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Your Excellencies, organizers of this international conference, dear panelists, participants worldwide, good afternoon from Ghana, Accra. Let me quickly touch on just a few things that will suggest a look into opportunities and challenges that exist with using technology to teach the mother tongue or the first language. Quickly, the first thing I want to touch on is that we should thank God, at least for one thing, that COVID-19 has rocked the world and given us this opportunity to use technology more widely. The first thing I want to mention is the use of radio. It's everywhere possible to use radio. Radio can always be used to tell simple stories, sing folkloric songs, and even allow phone in from the listeners all over the captive area of that radio frequency. Another opportunity that exists clearly is the use of television. I'm referring to some of the things I've written in my paper, which I've already presented to UNESCO, but I want to just sum up these things. Television is so common. And I have noticed across different countries that short drama, a few theaters, and panel discussions are always good to be shown on local television. Even illustrations, you could show things that concern the mother tongue language on the screen for viewers, particularly children in this case, to look at and identify quickly and listen to the word. I once tried a few things in my country, asking little children in the countryside the local names for some fruits and vegetables and plants. And I realized that only TV or radio or technology can support this thing very easily. The third one, which is a little more sophisticated, is the use of telephone. Now we have Android phone almost everywhere. On the telephone, I'm looking particularly at the use of social media. One of the commonest is WhatsApp. We get WhatsApp clips every now and then. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 1 hour, 2 minutes. You can always show to children a small clip. It can be in theater form, drama form. It can be just still picture. It can be conversational. But the important thing is that you can always pass on WhatsApp. It can be on their parents' phone. They can always pick it from anywhere possible. So you see, radio and TV can repackage anything to support multilingual teaching today. Then finally, the computer, whether it is the tablet or the laptop or the desktop, we can connect that to an overhead projector and connect it also to local area network or wide area network, which means the teacher can show one thing and so many people in the class or in the school can share in it. Then the final point I want to mention is produce e-content in various forms and levels. The opportunity has come for us to train teachers and language experts to produce simple electronic-based content, which we can share across the country, the villages, the community, and even the world. Now, of course, there are challenges to all these things. The same old story of cost. We know the cost for technology exists. Then the second challenge is that poor or limited resources. Some countries have it, even my own country, Ghana. We cannot say that we have had it all over. Some schools have access to it more than others. The third one is the fear to venture into the new. That is a problem. We tried something in Ghana. We allow a school, an all-girls school, all-day students, to bring all their cell phones to school to learn. And they brought them, we removed the SIM card, and we connected the SIM card to a technology which I'll talk about very soon. And that helped them to use technology to learn. Surely it is a possibility, but with challenges. The last one I want to mention here is the fear that the gadgets will be stolen from the users or from the children. It is always possible. And I don't know how we can stop stealing. It can always continue. Now, let me conclude by suggesting a few solutions. The first solution is that we should dare to venture, dare to use the cell phone in schools and find ways to control it. And then think outside the box. In Ghana, we did it. I led a team of experts in technology and language and science to create an innovation. We have what we call the iBox. It is a technology that allows 100-meter radius connectivity through Wi-Fi without the use of internet. And now the World Bank and the Ghana government is using it in a number of schools to spread technology and content. The final one is that policymakers must begin to be asked to relax restrictions so that people can think outside the box and use technology to promote teaching and learning, particularly in this case, supporting children to learn using their own mother tongue. On that note, I want to thank you again and thank UNESCO for this beautiful international conference. And we hope that the success will lead us to another one in the year to come. Merci. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joshua, for respecting the time limitation. And I think the value of your presentation really highlight the importance of the governance and the policy making and how the government can plan the most relevant technology solution to this perspective. You specifically mentioned quite a lot of low-tech solutions. But of course, currently the low-tech solutions are being empowered by the high-tech. They are no more the traditional low-tech solutions. I think this reminder is very important for us. And you also highlighted the importance of innovation. and to think and to plan out of the box. I think this is a very important inspirational thought for other participants and for organizations and also governments. Without further ado, I have the pleasure to introduce to the third panelist, Mr. Aaron Hemfield. He is the Mobile for Literacy Advisor for SEAL International. The SEAL is known as the Summer Institute of Linguistics. It's the short of the Summer Institute of Linguistics. He's also the project manager for Alpha Tile literacy game application. If I'm not wrong, I'm also cooperating with him in the past, especially under the mobile learning project. I have the pleasure to give the floor to Aaron. You have the floor.
Great, thank you so much. So honored to be here with everyone today. I'm going to share my screen, and if you could let me know that you're seeing it. It's 5:50 in the morning here in Mexico, so that explains some of the lighting. So can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, I bring greetings from SIL, where our vision is to see people flourishing in community using the languages they value most. I'm engaging a couple questions today. First, how can mobile support multilingual teaching and learning? And second, how do we design apps that can scale to serve thousands of languages? Some background first. We know that inclusive and equitable education must consider multilingualism. And we know that right now is an amazing opportunity to accelerate progress toward this goal. But we also know that some 40% of the world is trying to learn in a foreign language, and the COVID pandemic has more negatively affected this group. SDG 4 takes into account the educational needs of the speakers of more than 7,000 languages. Every little box here represents a language. We can group these languages by population size. Note that the two largest groups are in the middle, in green and light blue, with nearly 4,000 languages with between 1,000 and 100,000 speakers. What progress are we making in creating literacy game apps for the world's languages? This chart shows 7 organizations with award-winning literacy apps along with a number of language versions of their app. These and other organizations have demonstrated again and again that their apps provide significant literacy gains to learners. As an example of how to read the chart, Curious Learning has localized their app into 12 of the languages that are the 11th to 50th most spoken languages in the world. This chart highlights, first of all, the great work that these organizations are doing. I have learned a tremendous amount from these organizations, and I greatly respect their work. Second, the chart highlights that we need stronger investment in organizations like these committed to localizing apps into indigenous languages. And third, it highlights the need to modify our overall approach in order to accelerate the localization of these apps into the world's indigenous languages. Let's look at the Spanish-speaking countries of the Americas, where there are 553 indigenous languages. When we did some research and looked for apps for these languages in the Play Store, we found 159 apps. Of those, 46 had active response activities like true, false. 6 had spelling activities, but none had scaffolded activities. So there's a clear need to provide literacy apps with scaffolded activities. So how can mobile support multilingual teaching and learning? Well, most apps can fully function offline. They have sound and color. Learners receive immediate feedback. Apps can be shared without cost and without an internet connection. Mobile devices allow anyone to carry a library in their pocket. Learning can take place anywhere. And while books and videos necessarily proceed in a fixed order, mobile devices can present each activity in a variable format and can progress through the activities in a variable sequence. Audiobooks with synchronized text support 3 modes of engagement. Learners can progress from listening only to listening and reading to reading independently. Finally, when students learn using tablets or phones, they gain practical skills in digital device manipulation. And here are some specific examples of how mobile devices are being used. SIL's Bloom library now has digital content created by speakers of more than 450 languages. The Bloom editor does create multilingual books. The African Storybook Maker app empowers individuals to create new books and adapt existing books using their smartphones. Finally, Curious Learning's Feed the Monster teaches early literacy skills, and has been localized into more than 50 languages. So mobile devices do have huge potential, but we need to design so that rapid scaling is possible. In response to this need, SIL began developing Alpha Tiles, a suite of literacy games for Android devices. To prove ease of scaling, we ran a one-week workshop and created the Alpha Tiles app for 7 Mexican languages. The entire workshop was virtual. All 7 apps were built without in-person meetings. In closing, there we go. And we've now created the app for 33 languages in 17 countries with another 50 teams preparing their asset packages. In closing, we've learned 4 important lessons related to scalability. First, Alpha Tiles has a flexible asset package. We can build Alpha Tiles with 50 words or 5,000 words. Any game from the game list can be included or excluded. When we add new features, we make them optional. This prevents the app from becoming so robust that the minimum asset requirements are prohibitive for a language community. The first step for a language community should be a reasonable step. Second, Alpha Tiles is open source. This allows many entities to make use of a single solution in contextualized ways, and it prevents a single organization from becoming a bottleneck. Third, Alpha Tiles requires no translation. There's no default word list, and we use a zero text interface. Finally, there's no standard image collection. Any photo or illustration collection can be used. Thank you so much for your time, and I would be very happy to connect with anyone listening in today.
Thank you very much, Irene. I found very interesting your presentation and your design of the application was completely based on the statistics and research. I also see, on the footnote that you presenting some articles you publish. I think this is quite important insights into this panel that we should have evidence-based design and the use of technology for education. And you also mentioned the languages, the diversity of languages in Latin America. I think it's quite a good transition for the next speaker. Now I have the pleasure to introduce our last panelist, Mr. Victor Karilev. He's originally from the rural region of the Temuco of Chile. And he's also primary school teachers and speak some local language, including Mapudungun in the Chile. And so I have the pleasure to invite a visitor to share your insights from indigenous language speakers' perspective about how we could use technology to strengthen our language, but also more importantly, the culture underlying the languages. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon or good morning. Here in Chile, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to talk today. As you've just mentioned, I'll be talking about the Mapuche Nation. They are one of the indigenous peoples of Chile and part of Argentina as well. We have a population of around 1 million inhabitants who are part of the Mapuche Nation. But there are many fewer speakers of the language, only around 200,000 in fact. Today I'll be talking about IMLD. It is a fan page that we created around 5 years ago with a group of friends. And the idea is to give visibility to our language through image and visual files. We use Facebook and other platforms such as YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And as I always say, if you're not on social media, then it's almost as if you didn't exist in today's world. So I don't think anyone is not on social media nowadays. However, we're not able to access our content in our own language, in Mapudungun, because I imagine that it's probably not a profitable language to provide translation for. Now, I'd like to move on to my next slide. I know that there are some time constraints. Now, first of all, we'd like to talk about the aim of this platform, which uses social media. Now, could you please move on with the slides? There are 3 of us who have founded this page and who manage it. The aim is to Mapucheify social media. That's what we call it, using our own images. There are advantages to this. It's easy to use. It has a very low cost for publication, and it has a very wide reach. We use images and illustrations that belong to our culture with their own characteristics. Next slide, please. Next slide. I'll tell you when to stop. One of the aims is a linguistic and educational goal. And we use social media to give visibility to this. So the goal is to show how our language works, but also to provide education on it. Next slide, please. This is directly related to our culture, to some concepts that are specific to our culture, for example, clothing and the different colors. Now, next slide, please. Here you can see the different body parts and what they're called in our language. Here you can see the interactive function of our platform, how you can interact with others. Now, this is very important here. There's a series of emoticons that we've created. Now, generally, emoticons tend to be westernized, they tend to be white, and they tend to sort of homogenize all of these different expressions of culture. So now, what we've wanted to do is to give visibility to our specific characteristics and our different ways of clothing, for example. And we also wanted to show the different moods that a person can have in our own language. Now, the Mapuche culture is directly related to caring for nature, and we wanted to give this aspect visibility. Next slide, please. These are concepts that are also specific to cities. Now, the Mapuche people tend to live in rural areas, but they also visit urban areas, and therefore we need to teach concepts that may not exist in rural areas. Next slide, please.
And then we also have certain demands of a cultural and historical nature. For example, some of our claims from the Mapuche Nation, which are tied up with the history of Chile, but which get left out of the history books as the colonizing power imposed its own dominant discourse. And so what we're trying to do is to give an alternative slant on our history and culture. Another slide, please. And obviously, as well as some of our own cultural narratives, as part of our claims and demands in the Mapuche Nation. And here, what we're trying to do is raise the visibility of our own cultural and historical specificities. And as we move forward, we have also been able to address some of the concerns of the people who are trying to teach in the Mapuche language. And here we've got some of the printables that they can use. And could we move on a little further? I just want to move into my conclusion, if I could. Here, as you've seen, this is also about our own culture in the Mapuche Nation, about our relationship with nature and the cosmos. Could we please move forward through the slides, please? Here we have more educational material. And here I just wanted to go back, yes, to the previous slide, please. There is a lot that we can do to communicate via WhatsApp, and WhatsApp obviously doesn't have doesn't offer different ways of expressing yourself in anything other than a dominant language. It's fine if you're an English, French, or Spanish speaker, but here what we're trying to do is offer some culturally specific stickers for users of WhatsApp. In other words, that they should be able to identify a little more with these stickers that are being sent. And what we're trying to do is show the emotions and some of the concepts that are unique to the Mapuche Nation, and this is compatible with WhatsApp, and people are starting to use them to express themselves on WhatsApp, and in a more culturally specific way. And here again, we have more of the illustrations that can be used to assist with the teaching of grammar. This is really important for those who are learning the language of the Mapuche. Can we move forward, please, so that I can move forward to my conclusion, if you please? Skip this one, thank you. Please keep moving through the slides. Twitter, again, we're also present on Twitter and Instagram. We do see these a bit like with our YouTube, but, we're just trying to raise visibility. And here again, remember, there are lots of people who were curious to see how things are pronounced. And so we were able to put pronunciation videos on there, and again, this is I think a good way of raising visibility and making our language a little bit more accessible, and encourages use as well. And also, we want to create fora. This was important, especially during the lockdowns of COVID-19. We wanted to create a way where people could exchange their stories, but also, in the Spanish chats, there was we were there, but we wanted to make some that was specifically for the Mapuche as well. So, Jel Tumai, as we say, meaning thank you to everyone, and anybody who is interested can actually connect with us here. You can see on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you'll be able to see what we're doing. Remember, the idea is to raise visibility of the language, create opportunities for those who want to understand more about it, and Chile and Argentina, I think, are most active in this, but we're hoping to expand it. Thank you very much for the time you've given us. Our time is up, but we understand that these are only humble beginnings, but we're really hoping to make a splash in the long term. Thank you, and happy International Mother Language Day.
Thank you very much, Victor, for some very useful perspective from the ground when you are teaching local language. Due to the time limitation, I will not have a long summary of the panel discussion, and I would like to thank all the 4 panelists for their very comprehensive and diverse contribution. Before I give the floor back to my colleague Maki, I would like just to remind 2 points. The first one is that in the beginning I said we should avoid a kind of approach, we call it tech solutionism. We should not assume that technology is always the solution. Sometimes it's a problem. And the humans should always be in the center of planning, designing, and the provision of the solution. So this first point is very important. Secondly, behind the language, there's a cultural identity and a cultural characteristics. We need to think of the cultural needs of teaching and learning language, and also to protect the identity of the language. And we need to be careful about the colonization that the technology will bring in to the local language, to eliminate the local language, to eliminate the local culture. And we need to further highlight the human agency, including the teacher agency and the student agency, to put them in the centrality of providing and planning the technology solution. So with this, I thank everybody for your attention and your time. Maki, you have the floor. Thank you very much for your invitation once again. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Funshin, for moderating the second thematic panel discussion. Yet again, another session with wealth of knowledge and experiences to learn from, and time is again not on our side, but I believe that all of the speakers deserve a full day session with us, if otherwise, and hopefully that day will come someday. But I hope that this webinar is also not seen as just one-time event, but rather as a continuation of active engagement and exchanges in the coming weeks and months. So with that, before we conclude, I'd like to pass on the floor now to my colleague Ido Yao, from the director of the Institute of International Bureau of Education, to help us to summarize a little bit of the two panel sessions we just heard. So Ido, the floor is yours.
Thank Dama Funganga Daja, Azira Ido Yao, IBE Geneva YouTube. Dear colleagues, today is the Mother Tongue Day. I just spoke in my mother tongue saying that I'm Ido Yao, the director of the UNESCO Institute for Education based in Geneva. Dear colleagues, the introductory speeches in the opening ceremonies underline the two following points. First of all, he said that more than ever, COVID has boosted the use of ICT in education at all levels, and all countries took action for continuity of education, and the speakers invited countries to pursue their efforts to fight the digital divide. The second takeaway from the opening ceremony is that the use of mother tongue as medium of instruction, namely in early learnings, is key for quality improvement, for inclusion, and also to reduce school dropouts. The presentations by the panelists in the two panels clearly indicate that any topic related to the use of ICT has to be addressed from two perspectives. The first perspective from developed countries and another perspective from developing countries. In that context, from the perspective of developed countries, we know that they have developed countries have advanced technology tools. All the teachers are trained, and learners also have good digital skills available. They have access to devices and online learning tools and resources, and language of instruction is clearly identified, codified, digitalized, with plenty didactic support. From developing countries' perspective, majority of teachers and learners are digital illiterates with limited access to modern devices, little exposure to environments favorable to virtual and distance learning, and predominance of face-to-face learning. In developing countries, we also have many countries with numerous languages. Professor Aziz from Indonesia said that 700 languages in his country. We also know that in Papua New Guinea, we have more than 850 languages, and in countries like Congo or Cameroon, we have more than 300 languages. In developing countries, we also face many challenges in the choice of language of instruction to be used in school, and very little local languages are digitalized. Treating the topic of the webinar, therefore, definitely needs to take this dual conception of the teaching and learning context and environment. The panel presentations and some points in the chat show opportunities, advantages, but also challenges as follows. About opportunities and advantages of ICT use in language teaching, we have the diversity and availability of devices, phones, tablets, laptops, platforms like YouTube, Facebook, etc., can be very helpful, as reminded by Mr. Joshua from Ghana and Professor Rahim, who also demonstrated it. The use of ICT in language learning entails greater motivation in interests from younger learners. the ICT can also favor learner-centered learning versus teacher-centered learning. More personal involvement and monitoring by teacher, even shy learners can express themselves through ICT, as Professor Belassen said. Exposure of learners to more diversified document and resources is one of the advantages of the use of ICT. Also, the ICT can favor pedagogic difference. Let me use the French word that Professor Belassen used, la pédagogie différenciée, which can enable to address every learner, even in classrooms with huge learners or diversified age, etc. Mr. Belassen also insisted on the role of MOOCs, and countries in Africa, some countries in Africa who have more than 200 learners, these MOOCs can be very helpful for the pedagogy differentiate. Finally, on advantages, cost effectiveness in the use of ICT for language teaching has been clearly demonstrated by Aaron Hamfield during his presentation. Now, about the challenges, too many teachers are technology illiterate, above all in developing countries. And another challenge is that access to devices and connectivity is limited. Mr. Mohamed Serkal in the chat clearly showed it in the chat during the meeting. I also like another point from Madam Melika, who said that the use of ICT in education can hinder the socialization role of education. With the use of ICT in education, socio-emotional aspects are missing. For example, physical contacts between teacher and learners, which are very important in some cultural contexts, are very limited in the use of ICT-based teaching and learning. Finally, let me now share a few important actions to be taken by countries for mother tongue promotion and protection. First of all, countries should have clear language policies that indicate the place and use of languages in all development areas, education, economy, etc. And this language policy should be interministerial, involving namely ministers of cultures. Another point important is that languages are dynamic and countries must support research on languages, evolution, creation of new words, etc. to enrich the languages. Finally, countries to invest more in digitalization of local languages and their use on social media to get the interest of the youth. Artificial intelligence and digitalization of language can prevent their extension for those in danger, like the language called Mnr in South Africa. You know, this language that we use the click to speak it by. Today, we have only one speaker alive, and she is 87 years old. So by the use of ICT, we can save this language from disparition, for instance. With this, I would like to thank you very much for listening. Merci.
Merci, and thank you very much, Ido, for taking up this challenge. Probably you had the most difficult role today in order to summarize the very rich takeaways from the two thematic sessions. So thank you again, Ido-san. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. So now this really brings us to the end of this webinar. And it's always a shame to leave a webinar so rich and enlightful. But to close, I would like to now ask my colleague, Ms. Justine Sass, the Chief of the Section for Inclusive and Gender Equality here in Education, to deliver her closing remarks. Justine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maki, and greetings to all. I'm here to conclude the celebrations of the 2022 International Mother Language Day, at least the one that we're celebrating here with you today. As all of you know, we have never used technology so widely in education as we have in the last 2 years during the COVID-19 pandemic. We've heard during this webinar about the different advantages of using technology-based teaching and learning for multilingual education and some of the challenges in using this, particularly to reach the most marginalized, and Ido has pulled some of those out in his concluding remarks. UNESCO's Director General, in her message on today, said that technology can provide new tools for protecting linguistic diversity, but we must also be aware that technological progress will serve plurilingualism only as long as we make the effort to ensure that it does. Purposeful actions are needed to ensure inclusive, equitable, and multilingual education using technology. This requires, as we've heard today, support to teachers, closing gender and other digital access and skills gaps, adaptations of technological tools themselves, and obviously our commitment to ensure the right to education for all. The International Decade of Indigenous Languages, which began this year, should help us to give some new momentum to protect multilingual education and multilingualism more broadly. As the lead agency for this decade, UNESCO is fully committed to this cause and to multilingual education more broadly. I'd like to finally close by thanking giving particular thanks to Bangladesh for spearheading these celebrations. Thank Uzbekistan as well as the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie for supporting this day. I would obviously like to thank all of the wonderful speakers who shared their experience, their knowledge, and their passion for this topic. And thank you all of you for joining us today. With this, we hope that you stay safe, that you stay healthy, and that you have a very happy International Mother Language Day. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.